The chief host is seated. I draw your attention to a very own esteemed guest, the Pro-Chancellor of Veritas University, and no less a person, our esteemed His Lordship, Most Reverend Father Dr. Matthew Hassan Coker, the Pro-Chancellor of Veritas University. Please, a loud round of applause, please. Welcome, Father. Our Pro-Chancellor is the Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Sokoto, and he's here to grace this occasion as well. Next, please, ladies and gentlemen, join me as I also introduce another esteemed guest. In no less a person, our esteemed friend of the university has been here a number of times. He's the Irish ambassador to Nigeria. In the person of Mr. Peter Ryan. Round of applause for Mr. Peter Ryan, please. You welcome our esteemed ambassador. I return the privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to also introduce our esteemed Deputy Vice Chancellor, our very own, amiable, approachable, understanding, to join us on the high stage, please. A round of applause for Professor Corey. Professor Corey is the head of Department of Pharmaceuticals. I also please return the privilege to introduce and call to the high stage Professor H.U. Mwosu. He is the Dean Faculty of Engineering. Please, a round of applause for Professor Mwosu. I please also want to introduce to you our very esteemed Reverend Sister Kathleen. He is the Director of the Directorate of International Linkages. Please, a round of applause for Sister Kathleen. May I please also ask to join us on the high stage, the Provost College of Medicine. Please, a round of applause for our Provost College of Medicine, please. Join us on the high stage. Ladies and gentlemen, may I also introduce to all of us our esteemed Dean Faculty of Humanities. He is a one-time Provost College of Postgraduate Studies, Professor Gabriel Egbo. Please join us on the high stage. Professor Egbo, please join us on the high stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we will keep introducing guests as they arrive and we take notice. To commence on time, I please also call on one of our own esteemed Father Dr. Peter Hassan Kamaya. A round of applause for Father Peter Hassan Kamaya, please. Father Peter is an esteemed member of the university, he's a lecturer, Faculty of Theology, and he's the Veritas Catholic Bishops Conference of Nigeria. Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a dean. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have in our midst our immediate past Vice Chancellor, no less a person, our esteemed Reverend Professor Michael Konashe. Please join us on the high stage, please. Please, Paul, please join us on the high stage, please. A round of applause for our professor, please. A round of applause, a loud round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. For the banner. Ladies and gentlemen, May I please also introduce the Dean, Faculty of Theology, our very own Reverend Father Dr. Barnabas Chabayan. Please join us on the high stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, the day has come. The Veritas University 2026 SDGs conference is here and alive. It promises to be very engaging. To commence this event, may I please retain the privilege that we commence in prayer. We at a Catholic faith-based university, we usually commence in prayer to lead us forward in this very promising conference. And to lead us, please may I call on our very own Father Dr. Peter Kamaya to lead us in the opening prayer. Father, please.
Let us stand and pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art God, our loving and provident Father, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for the gift of one another. We thank you for the gift of this wonderful and God-given opportunity. We are here today, Lord, to brainstorm, to cross-fertilize ideas, and to compare notes. We ask you to inspire our inputs, our insights, and our contributions. When all is said and done, may your name be glorified. And may all of us be better poised and disposed to face the challenges of our dear country, Nigeria, and the world at large. In conclusion, may our dear University Veritas continue to be a center for the dissemination of learning and formation of character. We make this prayer through our Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever.
Please may we remain standing for the national anthem. The national anthem, we're only going to take the first stanza of the national anthem. After the national anthem, we're also going to take the Veritas University anthem. The first stanza of the national anthem, please, is going to be rendered by our very esteemed Veritas University Band.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. No tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are called to serve our sovereign motherland. Hail Veritas University, born out of the moral imaginations of the sages, a dynamic Catholic University. You set the pace and show the way. Citadel of learning, moral and academic excellence, we hail thee. You set aglow the gift of the Spirit, we love thee. Hail, great Veritas University, seeking the truth. Hail, Veritas University, my dearest alma mater. I know assist to irrigate the future. Healed out of the rocks, valleys and streams, you are a beacon, lightning the nations. Citadel of learning, moral and academic excellence, we hail thee. You set aglow the gift of the Spirit, we love you. Hail, great Veritas University, my alma mater, seeking the truth.
A louder round of applause for our Veritas University Band. Ladies and gentlemen, now that we're set and the stage is set, I retain the privilege to please introduce to you the convener of this conference, a no less a person than the Provost, College of Postgraduate Studies, Veritas University. Please, a round of applause for our convener, please. A louder round of applause for our convener, ladies and gentlemen. The convener, in no less a person, Father Dr. Anthony Kanu, is a current Provost, College of Postgraduate Studies, and he's going to give his address. Thank you.
The Pro-Chancellor and the Catholic Ordinary of the Diocese of Sokoto, the Most Reverend Dr. Matthew Hassan Kuka, our eminent and illustrious Vice Chancellor, the Very Reverend Father Hyacinth Ichoku, Your Excellency, Mr. Peter Ryan, the Ambassador of Ireland to Nigeria, distinguished professors of Veritas University, respected scholars, researchers, policymakers, members of the diplomatic community, students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As a tertiary institution founded on the core values of truth, integrity, service, and excellence, Veritas University, through the commitment of its distinguished Vice Chancellor, has firmly committed itself to advancing research, innovation, and policy engagement that contribute meaningfully to the realization of the SDGs. This 2026 International Conference on Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in Africa is an eloquent testament to this commitment, as it creates a space where theory interrogates practice and a context where global perspectives engage local realities. It is with great pleasure and subdued pride, yet with a deep sense of responsibility, that I warmly welcome you on behalf of the Directorate of Research, Veritas University, to the 2026 Veritas University Sustainable Development Goals International Conference. The Directorate of Research is particularly delighted to host participants from diverse institutions, disciplines, and countries, reflecting the truly global nature of sustainable development goals. Your presence here underscores the importance of collaboration, dialogue, and knowledge sharing in addressing the complex challenges confronting our world today. This conference offers the ambience for critical reflection, evidence-based conversations, and practical solutions. Over the course of this event, we anticipate insightful keynote addresses, robust scholarly exchanges, and productive panel sessions that will not only deepen our understanding of the SDGs, but also generate actionable recommendations for sustainable development at local, national, and global levels. The Directorate of Research appreciates the Vice Chancellor of Veritas University and the chief host of this conference. I wish to acknowledge the support of the Kuka Center and the Irish Embassy. Thanks to the panelists, paper presenters, partners, and colleagues whose dedication and expertise have made this conference possible. As we engage in these deliberations, participants are encouraged to take full advantage of the opportunities this conference offers. Let us have the freedom to network and engage in open conversation, share ideas constructively, question sustained assumptions respectfully, and stay on the journey of indefinite answers. Once again, on behalf of the Directorate of Research, I welcome you to this conference, and I wish you a rewarding, enriching, and impactful experience. May God bless Veritas University. May God bless our 2026 SDGs conference. Thank you, and welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, please a louder round of applause for our convener, Father Professor Anthony Kano. Next is the Vice Chancellor's address. A round of applause as I invite the Vice Chancellor to step forward for his address. Our Vice Chancellor, Professor Hyacinth Ichoku. Father Professor Hyacinth Ichoku, please.
My Lord Bishop and Pro-Chancellor of Veritas University, Your Excellency Peter Ryan, the Irish Ambassador to Nigeria, and all the other dignitaries and all the members of the conference gathered here. It's my big pleasure to welcome you all to Veritas University on this occasion of this international conference on SDGs. I'm really very, very excited about holding this conference, and I want to thank the convener and his team for bringing this conference to Veritas University. I believe that many of us are also excited to be here. University is, above every other thing, is a place for exchange of ideas. It's a market of ideas where people bring perspectives, particularly in a conference like this, to issues of national and international importance. And so I want to thank you for being here, sacrificing your time, traveling all the way to come to Veritas University and sacrificing so many other objectives to be here. So I think this is a very, very important period for us, a very important day for us for this conference. The topic cannot be better, built on the idea of the SDGs. This is a framework developed for the development of nations. And the preceding, you see, it's been coming in streams. Previously, it was the Millennium Development Goals, now in the Sustainable Development Goals. The idea is, if you look at each of these goals, the 17 goals that make up the SDGs, is absolutely addressing not just global issues, but particularly African issues, and more importantly, Nigerian issues. I want to just zero in on two. First, the issue of poverty, which is number one. You can agree with me that daily, millions of people go to bed hungry. Millions of people. In fact, it's estimated that over 500 people out of global 7 billion people go to bed without food at night. And that is not a good story to tell in a world that has experienced tremendous economic and social growth over this century. And so, but you see poverty walking our streets every day. Everywhere you look is poverty. People go to bed. Poverty, the reality of it is not just big grammar. It's not just about big grammar. Is that the long and short of it is people going to bed without food. I remember a case, I once had an experience when I went to, substitute for my friend who had traveled in a parish. And they kept coming out in the morning to celebrate the morning mass. One woman accosted me after morning mass. He couldn't even express her intention. She was just giving me a signal. He was just doing a sign from hand to mouth. Hand to mouth. And, I couldn't understand her. But it was about hunger. She was expressing her hunger. She had 6 children. 6 children. Unfortunately, the wife, an Okada driver, died in an accident. And so this woman was left with 6 children to take care of. She said in the midnight, one of them started crying because they had gone to bed without food at night. The last one was crying midnight because there was no food in the house. The woman was crying herself. So what pushed her to the mission in the morning was to come and beg for food. So, okay, I said, give her all the yam, give her yam in the father's house. And I asked myself, after that, what next? So that is the experience of millions of people in our land today. I remember entering Oba just a couple of weeks ago, entering Oba. And the Oba man was telling me the story of what happened in their yard. In their yard the previous day. A woman, a couple had the children. And one of them was so malnourished. The last one, a 6-month child. She was so malnourished. She died in the midnight. They were blaming her for not telling the neighbors. I've had experience of working in several states in this country as a consultant, particularly on issues about nutrition. And you meet people, you meet the naked kwashiorkor all over the place. There were hospitals where you just met, plenty of children looking for food, malnourished because they didn't have food. And still, this is the country where we have so many people who are so rich. So if you combine SDG number 1 and SDG number 10, for example, just think of the inequality, about inequality. Inequality is the crucial issue. It's not lack of resources. It is because the key issue is that the resources are so unevenly distributed. Even across the world, we know that about the 10 richest individuals in this world own more property and more wealth than the 50 poorest percentage of humanity. 10 richest individuals own more wealth than 50% of the world population. Can you imagine what that means? So, but inequality at the international level, you are also addressing internationally, locally, where prebendalism has resulted in unequal access to our resources. Because prebendalism, the quest for power at all cost. People want to, because people believe access to power is the easiest way to get access to national resources and share it so it is shared unevenly. So that is the story of our country, where so many people are so rich, so rich, and so many others, majority are so poor. They can't afford food, they can't afford water, they can't afford health care. That is the story we are addressing today. And so we want to thank again the conveners of this conference, people who have put this idea about addressing this framework. How does it apply to Africa? How does it help Africa to grow and mature as a nation, as a continent? Our population is growing, over 1 billion people across Africa. Nigeria is sitting over 230 million people, yet majority are in want. So once again, so it's not about speaking big grammar, it is about addressing the clear issues of our day. It is addressing the clear issues that are embarrassing us. Once again, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the conveners. May God bless us. And I want to use this opportunity then given to me to declare the conference open.
Please, a louder round of applause for our Vice Chancellor. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with a brief citation of the Pro-Chancellor, Veritas University, His Lordship, Most Reverend Dr. Well, the Pro-Chancellor, his citation will be taken as we proceed, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I retain the privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to call on the Pro-Chancellor, Veritas University, His Lordship, Most Reverend Dr. Matthew Hassan Kuka, Bishop of Catholic Diocese of Sokoto. Please, a round of applause for Pro-Chancellor, please.
Thank you very much. So you've heard my name and you know where I live and where I work, so everything else is really not necessary. Your Excellencies, my dear members of staff and students, I didn't know that my friend Father Kano had been promoted to provost. But when I accepted to do this, we agreed, he and I agreed that he would draft something for me. And like all big men and women, I will just come here and read what has been written for me. I was going to add maybe one or two things. And this was because I had other problems. I had a lecture to deliver in Lagos on Friday, and then I just came from Yola yesterday, and then I'm preparing a lecture for a convocation in Oye for next week. So, but last night when I called to ask for the paper, Father Kanu said that he gave me a very good reason, which had to do with his mother, but we'll leave it there. So what I have, I had an idea about what I wanted to say, but I thought, I've looked up the abstracts. There are 177 abstracts, so which means you're going to listen to 177 speakers. This promises actually to be an extraordinarily beautiful learning opportunity for all of you. What is left for me to do is simply to do a bit of brush strokes here and there, highlighting some of the issues. But essentially, I made up my mind that I would like to focus more on the Catholic Church specifically, and then use the opportunity of our history and culture. And my argument centrally is that in the final analysis, we ought not to be where we are now, even as a country, Nigeria, had we as Christians taken very seriously the teachings entrusted to us, and I will come to that at the end of my presentation. But we migrated from Millennium Development Goals to now Sustainable Development Goals. And given what the Vice Chancellor is saying, it means that we were promoted without passing exam. We didn't do much with the Millennium Development Goals, but we've been promoted now to Sustainable Development Goals. So the food has not changed, but the menu has changed. But if you remember, and many of you may be too young to remember, in 1999, we had what the world called the end of history, which was the collapse of communism. But there are all kinds of projections about what this famous year 2000 was going to look like. And I'm sure some of your staff and students, those of you who are much younger, will not remember this. But there were all kinds of projections about what, apocalyptic projections about what the year 2000 was going to look like. It was going to be a magic year because we also had that there was going to be a Y2K bug. All our computers were all going to crash, and people genuinely believed. And we believed because the story started from America and parts of Europe. So we in Africa said, if they have made up their mind, all we have to do is either to start packing our things or whatever. But we were told that in the year 2000, all kinds of horrible things would happen. Planes will crash. Bank accounts will be taken up by some gobble. National grids will be crashed. And Nostradamus, as having predicted that the year 2000 was going to be a year of war. And that, of course, most things were going to be free. And Fukuyama published his book, The End of History. And we also predicted that there was going to be a new world order. And so the MDGs at that point were actually meant to give us some kind of hope. That is, if we survived at all. But then the Holy Father, Pope John Paul II of blessed memory, now St. John Paul, issued an encyclical. And the title was, As the New Millennium Approaches, Novo Millennia Innuente. And that encyclical was full of hope, encouraging Christians to look beyond, not just about the predictions, but that we needed to lay a moral foundation, for helping to figure out how the world was going to look and how to end some of the issues anticipated by the MDGs, extreme poverty, hunger, focusing on education, promotion of gender equality and women empowerment, reduction of infant mortality and and maternal mortality, combating HIV, AIDS, malaria, and so on. And then, of course, to ensure environmental sustainability. I think, in fairness, we did very well in terms of articulation of the policy issues. We also created the infrastructure with offices, departments, and so on to respond to all of this. And I remember yesterday in the evening from Yola, I met an old man who had been a very good friend of, but I had lost contact with him. And in my lecture in Lagos on the environment, I had raised the issue. Hassan Adamu was his name, Ambassador Hassan Adamu. He's quite an old man now. But we met and we were chatting, and I had made reference to him because when President Obasanjo set up the Ministry for Environment, and Ambassador Hassan Adamu was appointed the minister, many Nigerians felt terribly sorry for him because, first of all, we didn't know what a Minister of Environment was going to be. And, when they have this appointment, some of them when they translate them, if you're reading the news in English, it's easy. But when these things are made into the local languages, they become very complicated. So translating what it meant to be Minister for Environment, some people say is minister in charge of sweeping and making sure that grass is cut and so on. And in response to the MDGs, when the government of Kenya set up a Ministry for Women Affairs, they made a mistake of appointing a man as the minister. And the man had to resign because when they translated the appointment of what it meant to be a Minister of Women Affairs, he was going to be responsible for crashing down the prices of lipsticks or bras, all the things that relate to the things women use. So the poor man had to resign. But I'm just making the point that although these issues were very important and quite significant, but for us in Nigeria, as I said, a second minister was appointed after Ambassador Hassan Adamu, and the minister actually rejected the appointment because he thought being a minister of environment was beneath him. So we had the infrastructure, we had the hardware, so to say, but without the software. And the result is that the more things change, the more they remain the same. So we're still having these endless conversations about homelessness. I remember some 5 years ago, I got a letter from the Association of Architects in Nigeria asking me to come and deliver a lecture to them. I said, I'm not an architect, because I don't know any group in Nigeria that has not asked me to deliver a lecture. It's when I tell them I'm not a professional, they say, no, just choose any topic. So the architects asked me to come and speak. I kept scratching my head. I couldn't come up. But one day, as I was about to sleep, an idea came to my mind, and I jumped out of bed. And I decided to write the title of my lecture. It was, The Son of Man Has Nowhere to Lay His Head, Architecture and Homelessness in Nigeria. And actually, I enjoyed writing, researching for that. And when I delivered it, the architects were quite happy. They were very, very excited. So the point I'm making is, in the final analysis, whether MDGs or sustainable development, are we dealing with a disease or are we dealing with a symptom? Because I think it's important for us to understand, and I'm sure a lot of the lecturers here are going to speak to those issues, because very often in Nigeria, we confuse symptoms for the disease. We see all this, we're asking people are being killed here and there, what exactly is happening? And we think that to end the fight is just to separate the people and stop them from fighting. This morning I was listening to a radio program on snakes, and a man who said a snake entered his house, but that people told him that for us in Nigeria, if a snake comes to your house, it means enemies have sent it. So in the same way, there are many diseases that are curable in our country. If they have been sent by the enemies or by the witches, there may be very little we can do about that. So essentially, I think that unless, and I think we can debate these issues, a lot of scholarship, Professor Mike Kwanashi is here, in their younger days, when academia and academic activities were really, really very exciting and alluring and engaging, when Marxism was, structural analysis, very eloquent analysis of the Nigerian situation we are undertaking. Still, has something changed? Yes, a lot of things have changed. In what direction? That the verdict is still out. But essentially, I think we need to come to terms with the fact that there may not be anything wrong with us. It is perhaps the quality of the tools that we are using, and we are largely using tools we didn't design. So part of this conversation about how and why is it that we have motion but very little movement in any direction at all, should help us to understand that maybe a little bit of most conscious structural analysis of the kind of state that we inherited, the kind of weapons that we are using, the kind of tools that we are using, the political system that we are using. I mean, I've been involved in the last few months or so on debates and discussion about democracy. And the general, we flew from Yola to Abuja yesterday, and we spent a long time. I was talking to a professor of political science who is agitating for what he calls a guided democracy, because this one is not working. And I said, my brother, time for guided democracies may have passed. Nigerians have become too educated, too angry to be guided by anybody, which is also part of the reason. But again, it is to say that if we look at the kind of systems we have adopted, you can't excuse anybody, but one of the most critical things is not just about having these structures and institutions, ministries and ministers. It is the difficulty that a Nigerian president has in picking a team. You know, when we had the Westminster parliamentary system, it seemed to have been perhaps a far better system for us, precisely because it was not restricted to term limits. So in the sense that it was not so much, you call elections not because it is 4 years. When Nigerians were debating the issue of tenure at the Political Reform Conference, of which I was secretary, the central debate was, what should we have? Then they said Obasanjo wanted to have a third term. And they said, no, it wasn't possible. Nobody should have a third term. Just finish and go. Then they said, okay, let's have 6 years. But of course, the problem with Nigerian debate was that we're not looking for the best system. We're just looking for, we've agreed that this system is is a criminal enterprise. We're just struggling to make sure that our own criminal gets in. And so people say, okay, let's have only 4 years. So when the man finishes, he can go. And then our man can come in. The issue of the quality of performance or otherwise, that's talk for another day. But I found with the Westminster parliamentary system that the British left for us, more enduring. I think maybe that's probably what they have in a place like Singapore, because at the end of the day, in Singapore, in other parts of the world, where you're struggling to deal with what the British left behind for us. At the time we were debating tenure, and Obasanjo had done for 8 years, and they said, no, you cannot do another 3 years. But at that time, Tony Blair was Prime Minister of the UK, and he had been in power for 13 years. Because the British system is a little bit peculiar, and in response to our situation, let me put it from the point of view of just choosing people who are going to be ministers, for example. In the British system, a minister will, what we call ministers now, will always come from the members of parliament. Okay? You can't come from outside. And the second and most important point is that when the people in power set up their team, appoint their ministers, for example, you in the opposition appoint your own, which you call a shadow cabinet. So that means that if the government has a minister of agriculture, the opposition has a shadow minister or cabinet secretary, whatever you call them. So you'll have the equivalent of an opposition. So the business of the minister or shadow minister will be to try and confront the Nigerian and confront this other person with alternative realities about how agriculture can best be managed. In that way, Nigerians and citizens are listening, they are also watching, and if you have good PR and so on, at a point when people get fed up, it might just be time to call for an election. When you call for election, if you lose, it is from the parliament that the prime minister emerges because he's leader of the... But in our situation in Nigeria where everybody has to send, it is the state governors that send ministers. And the ministers they send are people that they are sending out of patronage. So the average president of Nigeria just sits down, all you can do is allocate positions, but you have no control over whom your community sends. It is another way of saying that fundamental to all of the things we're talking about, sustainable MDGs, whatever it is, we're having to deal with the problems of the quality of manpower, but also the quality of the bureaucracy. And the Nigerian bureaucracy has ended up becoming, I mean, the civil servants realized that the thieves were those who are holding office. They were the ones having to sign the paper. And today, the average senior government official has his own construction company, surreptitiously bidding for contracts, just like everybody else. More often they get the contracts. So it is not enough to simply itemize all of these things as if we are dealing with a best case scenario. So in our situation, we may list all of these issues, but we find that we are really not making any progress, not because work is not being done, but because very often too many people are accidentally finding themselves in power without the passion. To be made a minister of, there are certain ministries in Nigeria that nobody would take them seriously. You would think that the Igbos who love education so much would love Ministry for Education. But I remember when, I've forgotten who he was, when an Igbo man was appointed Minister of Education, Ohaneze Ndigbo published a protest statement saying they have been given what was introduced into the Nigerian power vocabulary as Yeye Ministry. Yeye Ministry means the ministry that there isn't much to steal from. So this is the kind of bureaucracy, and I'm just underscoring the fact that it's not enough for us to itemize all of these goals and so on. And perhaps the reason why we, as I said, having motion without movement is not because the resources are not there. This is a country that is stupendously rich, beyond measure. A few months ago, I think it was either October or November, a young man came to see me when I was in Abuja. He said that he was threatened with a sack from his job. I said, where do you work? He was working in a nightclub. I said, what happened? He said, one man came. He's a customer. They know him in the nightclub. And that he and his friends, the drinks they drank were 3.5 million naira. I said, what? He said, 3.5 million naira. I said, what are you talking about? Then he looked at me, he started laughing. He said, feeling sorry for me. He said, oh God, 3.5, that is just chicken. In the nightclub, people spend 19, 15, 20 million a night. Now, in the plane, yesterday, we're talking about all this, and a man told me, he's a professor. He said that in this Abuja, there is a young man lying in the hospital between life and death. Young man is just 16 years old. 16. When he, just for celebrating his 16th birthday, his mother gave him 11 million naira to go and organize himself. Go and hire a stage limousine and hire a Lamborghini and hire, which cost 4 million. The other one cost 7 million, then the party. Then he went to enter the Lamborghini, driving very fast, perhaps 100 kilometers, went and crashed with another person. Now, so when you talk about this hunger, it's not as if the money is not there, it's where is it located? So you have massive resources being allocated every time and in every place, and yet very little is happening. And that's why people like me remain, and I'm sure a lot of us remain so thoroughly angry, because you can't explain why a country like Nigeria, anybody should be, as you say, sleep with an empty stomach. But it also means that we as Christians, let me put it that way, we now need to renew this and adopt the best strategy for engagement. Because the problem with the situation in Nigeria is that all of us are culpable. We're not innocent. We're not as innocent as we look. We simply assume that all these bad things are being done by politicians. We are outsourcing our own responsibilities and obligations, whereas among us here, whether it's a student union leader or whatever, we are replicating the same kind of situation. So we need, and I think for those of you who are young and still preparing to be leaders for tomorrow, this is the time and the place for you to run. I mean, to begin to think a bit more clearly. Now, we have problems, of course, with issues of the quality of institutions, even the quality of our politics. There are two books that, if you can, they're old, they're probably about 10 years old. But one was written by a French scholar called The Politics of the Belly, which is to explain the fact that African politics was really not about issues, but it was about food to chop. The second is a much older book. The guy was a friend of mine, but he's dead now. The title of the book is Africa Works, the Instrumentalization of Failure. That's the subtitle. Africa Works, the Instrumentalization of Failure. And all he was saying in the book is that, look, when you see all these things in many parts of Africa, you refer to it as political failure, such as we don't have electricity, we don't have roads. He said the man is arguing that this failure is actually a weapon. And because you ask yourself, yesterday again we were discussing in the plane, and I said from Suleja to Mina is about 100 kilometers. They've been building that road for more than 20 years, 100 kilometers. So when I tried to, and I said to the man, I said, the last, I went to get from Suleja to Mina, it took us about 2.5 hours. This man I was talking to looked at me and said, 2.5 hours. Just last week I was in Mina, it took me 4.5 hours. From Lagos to Ibadan, and maybe 100 and something kilometers, over 20 years, we still never finish. But of course, the cowboys who are involved in this construction, their mansions are expanding by the day. Their children are living the most exotic lives and so. So these are some of the issues. And I want, by way of conclusion, to mention what I consider to be the way forward. Now, namely, what has the church been teaching? Because we were given the responsibility to teach the world. Let me put it that way. Not talking of intellectual teaching. The lecture I delivered in Lagos, the title was To Have and to Hold. It was about connecting our responsibility to the care of the environment with the matrimonial vows that couples make. And I was asking that we therefore dedicate ourselves, because in the final analysis, we have to be able to say what we did with the trust that God gave us. Now, remember that the church has already laid out for us quite a lot. When Jesus asked us to take the gospel to all the ends of the earth, what exactly was he saying? Remember the context of this gospel. When Jesus says we should take the gospel to all the ends of the earth, he had already told us, you remember, so all the things you are talking about, MDGs or Sustainable Development Goal, Isaiah 55 verse 1 says, are you thirsty? Who are those who are thirsty? Come and drink water for nothing, without money. Okay? That's what Isaiah said. For those who are ministers or whatever, Jesus says in Luke chapter 22 verse 27, behold, I come among you as one who serves. And for infant mortality, maternal mortality, or infant mortality, you are reading the stories in Nigeria. Isaiah 49:15, can a woman forget the infant of her breast? Matthew 9:14, suffer little children to come to me. She will be worrying herself about the condition of our children. She'll be waiting for the United Nations to tell us. Jesus says in John 14:6, I am the way. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 6, verse 35, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. If we were true to that reality, we'll be concerned about why anybody should go to bed hungry. The famous John 10:10, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. This is not a duty or a responsibility that we outsource to those who are in government. It is a collective duty. And the mistake that many of us make is to think that the bad things that are being done in this country are done by those who are, as we say, those who are in power. Each and every one of us. I once wrote an article a long time ago, and I titled it, The Power of One. Each and every one of us. We are not called upon to change the whole country or to change the world, but even the space where you occupy. So for us as Christians, and the point I'm making here is for us as Christians, if we are inspired by the message to take this gospel to all the ends of the earth, a message that Jesus Christ himself articulated very clearly, a message that involves sacrifice, a message that involves ensuring that each and every one of us is not a stranger in the society where we find ourselves, we must therefore accept some level of dereliction in our duties and responsibilities. And here I want to end by talking about, very briefly, about the social teachings of the church, which is hopefully the intellectual connection between the Kuka Center, what we're trying to do, and Veritas University. When the American Bishops' Conference published their own text of the Catholic Church's social teachings, they called it the Catholic Church's best kept secret. Because the shock was, when people read these documents, they were asking, how come the church had not been talking about? And the story is basically the same here in Nigeria. You know, here you hear politicians will tell you, when they start quarreling, they will say, after all, the manifesto was written in my bedroom. The constitution of the party I wrote the constitution of the party. And what they are telling you is that it was not meant to be a document. It was just for us to tender something. Now, Conrad Adenauer, who was perhaps, apart from the former chancellor, he probably was the longest serving chancellor. Maybe after Angela Merkel probably equaled his record or surpassed it. But why was he the longest serving chancellor? Konrad Adenauer had a good luck. He went when Hitler came. He was one person. He did literally responsible for what Cologne is now, the city of Cologne, with all its beauty. But when Hitler came, he was one of the people he was a mayor. Hitler came to Cologne and he refused to go and receive him. So when Hitler actually ascended to power, he came after him. He fled, ended up in a convent, and that's where he found the 1891 encyclical titled Rerum Novarum. He read it, and that is where his eyes opened. Because he saw there was nothing more to talk about how to organize a society and how to build a fair society. Now, if you see from 1945, when the United Nations came to be, from 1945, when the British people set up the National Health Service, from 1945, again, which is about the time, all of that, as the Second World War is coming to an end, we now see that a lot of values of the Christian faith are being inserted into policy, hence the emergence of the Christian Democrats across Europe. This is why you find laws, for example, to a place like Germany, where tell you that you saw an accident and you moved on, you are guilty of committing a crime. And I'm sure those who inserted that into the law must have been inspired by the story of the Good Samaritan. The point I'm making is that for those of us who are Christians, you hear agitation, people say, we Christians want to get to power. To do what? Because we want to get to power just to continue with the criminality of stealing and looting the resources of the state. There's never been a time when EFCC said, the criminals, all these governors, those who were Christians, stand on one side because you are not guilty of anything. So we have enough in the church's social teachings to inspire us. And I want to simply say that the Catholic Catechism has, talks about what the church called the universal destination of human goods. We should be a platform for us to debate and contest for an equitable society. Because the goods that God put here on earth were not meant for a certain category of people. That is what the Catholic Church is teaching us. Rerum Novarum talked about the kind of new things that are possible. And at that time, industrialization was coming, and then the conditions, social conditions of workers was intolerable. International Labour Organization was formed in 1919. Pope Leo XIII issued his encyclical in 1891. And if you read that encyclical, you will not believe it, that will a Pope be talking like this? Because he could see the dehumanizing, the corrosive impact of capitalism on society. We are still living with those things. And that is why when our new Pope said his name was Pope Leo XIV, I was literally dancing because I could connect the dots. If he's Pope Leo XIV, then he must be drawing inspiration from Pope Leo XIII. So we should put on our boots, because now it's time for agitation for a better life. Because in 1963, Pacem in Terris, for example, that is peace on earth. The encyclical lays conditions. How do we have peace? We believe that peace is something that soldiers can give us, or we believe that peace is something the state can give us. Again, we have enough inspiration. Populorum Progressio, Centesimus Annus, Caritas in Veritate, and so on in 2009. Then, of course, Laudato Si. And you can see that the church has increasingly demonstrated. In 2017, for example, the Holy Father set up what is called Day of the Poor, just to call our attention to the reality of poverty. The Day of the Sick. On May 13, 1992, the Holy Father fixed a day for the sick. And today, we have February 4th, which is tomorrow, Friendship Day, thanks to Pope Francis. So I'm saying in effect that we as Christians have all the material that we require to help to build a good society. And even if the only contribution we can make is to be inspired by the Word of God and insist that a good society is not going to be built by the grandstanding of politicians, but that we have a duty and a responsibility to infuse what the church is teaching into public policy. And we can do that as academicians, we can do that as Christian students, as Catholic students, we can do that as Catholic nurses. So in each and every one of these departments, the focus should be Because if you are in the final, are you a civil servant who happens to be a Christian or a Christian who is a civil servant? So how we behave where we find ourselves determines how our societies can grow. So I want to end once again by thanking you. I'm sorry I've gone on for much longer than I'm sure I personally planned. But just to say that we cannot spend our time reading the book of Lamentation because the book of Revelation is still ahead. So let's be inspired. Let Lamentation help us to inspire to very quickly reach to Revelation, where the building of the kingdom of God becomes easier for us. And I think the place to start is now. Once again, thank you very much for your time and patience.
Wonderful, wonderful, very wonderful. Very inspiring, very engaging keynote address by our very Pro-Chancellor, Veritas University, Most Reverend Dr. Matthew Hassan Kuka. Before we proceed to the keynote address by the Irish Ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Peter Ryan, I would like to please request Ms. Dr. Maxwell Okando. Dr. Maxwell Okando is the head of Department of Religion and Intercultural Studies. He is also the representative of the Faculty of Humanities to the Directorate of Research, Veritas University. He will take the citation of the Irish Ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Peter Ryan, before Mr. Peter Ryan delivers his keynote address. Please, Dr. Maxwell, and may I please request the Irish Ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. Peter Ryan, to please stand as we take his citation. A round of applause for him, please, ladies and gentlemen.
The Pro-Chancellor, Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor of Veritas University, other distinguished guests, good morning. My task is very simple, just to read an abridged version of the profile of His Excellency Peter Ryan. That I'll do quickly. A brief profile of His Excellency Peter Ryan, Ambassador of Ireland. Ambassador Ryan is the 17th resident ambassador of Ireland to the Republic of Nigeria and presented credentials to President Bwari on 12th January 2023. The embassy also covers relations with Benin Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, as well as the Economic Community of West Africa. Formerly ambassador to New Zealand, Samoa and Tonga, 2018 through 2022. He has also served in Hong Kong, New York, Singapore, Korea, and Japan, as well as in a range of Dublin-based roles since joining the Department of Foreign Affairs in 1994. A graduate of UCD, he also served as director of the Asia-Europe Foundation in Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you His Excellency Peter Ryan. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My favorite phrase in Nigerian English is standing on existing protocol. It's impossible to do duty to and pay homage to all of the distinguished visitors who are here, or distinguished people who are here on this dais with me, but I want to acknowledge, if I may, you'll forgive me if I acknowledge His Lordship, Bishop Kuka, your distinguished Vice-Chancellor, and of course your distinguished Provost. And I want to thank the Provost for the invitation to participate today, and I want to commend him and the organising committee, of course, in pulling together a really important conference at a key time. The Bishop referred to the 177 abstracts that are in the booklet that we have. I prefer to call that my homework, because I'm going to have to go home and try and read some of these abstracts later. But one of the things that struck me in glancing through the abstracts that the Provost sent to me yesterday was that in each of those 177, or in many of them at least, there's more than one discussant, more than one person offering. In some cases, there's 5 and 6 people offering from different institutions, not just based here in the continent, but internationally. And it's a reminder to us, as Bishop Kuka covered in his inspiring address, of the collectiveness of this effort. We cannot possibly begin to address challenges of the scale of those outlined in the Sustainable Development Goals. We cannot even begin to do that if we're on our own, can we? It's impossible, isn't it? So today's conference and tomorrow's conference, I think, is a real example of that sort of collective effort and collective spirit. And you're very fortunate in Veritas to have a leadership that is committed to academic excellence and also to internationalization, and to connect you in to the wider world, and to make sure that we're not just looking at our own house, but we're learning from our neighbors and we're sharing our insights and our learning with them. So I want to commend you and thank you for that. Distinguished delegates, colleagues, partners, today we unite people, environments and institutions to accelerate Africa's Sustainable Development Goals together. I bring you warm greetings from the people of Ireland, an island nation whose greatest gift is our shared global solidarity. Ireland as an independent state is 104 years old this year. So we're only a baby. We're still a baby. But we have been a nation for 1,000 years. We are a nation that was occupied, that was not able to enjoy democracy or the benefits of freedom for 800 of those years. But yet in the short 100 years that we've been independent, we have managed to make, together with our friends, we've managed to make a remarkable journey. And today, when I was asked to speak about the role of foreign agencies in particular, I decided to speak about the one place I might know something about. Because people like me get to spend a lot of time overseas. We get to meet some great people. But at the heart of what we're doing is we're trying to bring insights on our own actions and to bring those and to see where we can partner and where we can collaborate with others. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about where Ireland stands and why the Sustainable Development Goals are critical to us and to our people, and what we are doing as a nation and as a people. And I think, when I think of His Lordship's remarks there, we don't need to overcomplicate a world that's already very complicated. We should be able to distill down into concrete examples the journey of our people, and we know what it is we need to do to improve the lives and improve the future for the generations who are coming. So in 2026, as we confront the urgent challenges of achieving the 2030 agenda, the role of foreign agencies has transitioned from traditional aid to strategic inclusive partnership. Under the theme of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in Africa, people, environment and institutions, we recognize that sustainable progress requires an integrated approach that places local communities at the center of development. In the case of Ireland, our overseas development partnership is called Irish Aid, and we're a leading example of this paradigm shift. We prioritize without apology, without any confusion, we apologize the people who are furthest behind first. That is the priority for the Irish government and the Irish people's overseas development aid program. We demonstrate in particular a profound commitment to the people of Africa, particularly through our investment in women's organizations, women peace builders, to advance gender equality, SDG 5, as you know. In relation to the environment, we've scaled up our international finance, climate finance, to a target of $250 million annually by 2025, supporting resilient food systems and climate adaptation in regions like the Sahel. Finally, by strengthening institutions, we foster good governance and local leadership, exemplified for our support for a whole series of African Union-related strategies across the continent. Through these multifaceted partnerships, Ireland works to empower African nations to build the robust, self-sustaining systems necessary to secure a peaceful and prosperous future for all. The current work that Ireland does in Africa is not done in a vacuum. It is built on decades of commitment and partnership to the people of Africa. It is built on the legacy of our Irish missionaries who came to countries like Nigeria and devoted their lives to the people of this place. It is a special and unique connection to us that we enjoy today. And we recognize that we walk in the footsteps of these people and that we have a very special relationship with the people of Africa because of that service that was given. And not just the service that was given, but the manner in which it was done. It was done in bearing witness with people and in real life collaboration and partnerships. Our approach is slightly different, as you can gather, to the approach of many other countries around the world. We are a nation of less than 8 million people. We're a nation that has a folk memory of starvation. We're a nation that has a folk memory of mass immigration. Like Nigerian families, every single family in Ireland, north, south, east and west, has had to bear the burden of Japa. Every single family in our country has people who are overseas. So for us, we don't read about it in a book, we live it. So therefore, when we see this happening in other places, we know you cannot put a sticking plaster and fix one little issue. You have to try and address it structurally, don't you? You can't just do it with one thing isn't going to fix that. One thing isn't going to reunite people from one side of the world to each other. So we recognize a commitment to democracy, to human rights, to consistent values, but also we recognize the importance of partners working together. What most people in this room will not know, for example, is that Ireland was the co-chair of the meeting which set the SDGs. Little Ireland was. Was it because we were great at writing? Was it because we were smarter than anybody else? No. It was because of the insights that we bring to the table. We bring a neutral position. We are a country that had a colonial rule in Ireland for almost 1,000 years. So if you think in Nigeria, you had 50, 60 years of colonial rule. We had 1,000 years of colonial rule. So when we see it around the world, we recognize it. And we recognize the benefit of commitment to human rights, treating people equally, and having a democracy. Of all the countries in the world, 196 countries in the world, Ireland is maybe the third or fourth oldest democracy in the whole world. Why? Because like you, we waited a long time for democracy. And democracy belongs to us. It belongs to the people. As the bishop said, we don't point at somebody else and say, that person is responsible for the way our country is. It is a shared effort and a shared endeavor. We have a couple of very significant global interventions that stand to our philosophy of reaching the furthest behind first. The first one is because of our history, again, of mass starvation in our country. We have a very strong commitment to SDG 2, which you will all know is about zero hunger. You'll all understand that, the importance of that. We're trying to move with our partners beyond food aid to food systems. And we had a visitor to this university last year from the University College Cork, Dr. Stephen Onakuse, who is working in this space together with many, many people in Ireland to try to realise systemic transformation across the continent of Africa, drawing on our own experience. It's almost unique in Europe that there's a country in Europe where 4 generations ago there was mass starvation. It's almost unique. So this is a national obsession with the Irish people. If education is a national obsession, the eradication of hunger for others around the world is also a national obsession for us. We're also one of the largest food producers on the planet, maybe the 3rd largest per capita in the entire world. And the reason and the commitment to that, again, is in response to what happened to us a mere 150 years ago, which is not very long in the march of a nation. It's not very long at all. So we have a program called the Africa-Ireland Agricultural Development Partnership, where we work right across Africa, particularly in the places that need our help the most, like in Ethiopia and in Malawi and in other places, where we bring expertise, for example, around things like the Irish potato. I know that a few people in Plateau State will have heard of that. So we share our experience and our expertise with the people who need it the most across Africa. We're also one of the world's leading contributors to the global scaling up nutrition movement, the SUN movement, which is trying to ensure that maternal and child nutrition are prioritized in national budgets across the Sahel. So we work to match funding by national governments. In the area of climate action, SDG 13, we recognize that the people who are least responsible for the effects of climate change are the people who are suffering the most. So in 20 and 24, Ireland met its commitment, its international commitment, in international climate finance. We believe in holding other countries to account to meet the commitments that they make. It's very easy to stand up at a conference and say, I'm going to do A, B, and C, but it's very difficult to implement that. It takes commitment, it takes determination, and it takes knowledge and the ability to work in partnership with others. Because, as I said at the very beginning, these are not things that we can do on our own. We focus in particular on adaptation, because many others focus on mitigation, and the Irish focus in particular on adaptation. And we try to support coastal resilience projects, for example, in Mozambique and a whole range of countries across Africa that protect communities from the changing weather systems with which we have to operate. We work in particular at the COP summits, the conference of the parties, when the countries come together with the NGO sector and interested parties to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and the journey we're on. And Ireland in particular is a vocal advocate for the Loss and Damage Fund, which ensures that global funds are made available to the most fragile states through direct grants. And this is a differentiator for Ireland. Ireland does not give loans to people. We do not give loans to our partners. We give direct grants to our partners. Because when we were developing country and when we were trying to make our way, we weren't in a position to accept loans. How on earth could we repay a loan? But the things that was most effective for us in our experience were when direct grants came. And that's what our partners ask us for in Africa and other parts of the world. And that's what the Irish people deliver. I think on SDG 4 and 5, around gender equality and education, you won't be surprised to know that they are two of the SDGs that are very close to the heart of Irish people. Of course, we work with girls, focused on girls' education right across Africa and indeed across the world. We work in Sierra Leone, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Malawi, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Ghana, here in Nigeria. We work right across the continent of Africa, building on the legacy of our missionaries and ensuring that the opportunity is given to young people to give them access to education. Because if there's one thing that transformed Ireland and transformed the trajectory of our nation from a people that were subjugated, from a people who could not express themselves, who could not honor their ancestors through using their language and using their culture, but were expected to take on an alien culture. The one thing that kept our Irish people free was the access to education. And we were very innovative and imaginative, like people are in Africa, around ensuring that our children get access to education. Our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents have made huge sacrifices. As many people in this room will know, your parents are also making huge sacrifices to ensure that you're in education. And we think that's hugely important, and it's very high priority for Ireland. Of course, in the global health and pandemic preparedness, under SDG 4, we, since the pandemic in 2020, we've significantly increased our support for health systems, both in terms of vaccine equity, where we have supported the development and the expansion of local vaccine hubs across Africa, including in Senegal and in parts of West Africa, and including the gifting of COVID-19 vaccines to places in Nigeria and also across West Africa, and also through our support to Gavi in combating HIV, AIDS and malaria. It's a very high priority for us. So there's two things I'd like you to go away from today with before I go on, or to consider as the conference continues. And one is that at a time when many countries are withdrawing their development aid programs. So if you're following what's going on in the world, there's a move, isn't there, towards more hard power, and there's a move towards looking after our own citizens and prioritizing them above the citizens in our partner countries. Is that fair to say? Everywhere in the world we see that. Every time we switch on the television, you see something about how countries are changing their perspective and changing the way they work with partners. I'm delighted to be able to say that Ireland is not changing its position. Ireland has increased its development aid programme this year against a backdrop of almost every major country in the world reducing its development programmes. We also, our aid is completely untied. So usually when a country gets aid, there are certain conditions that come with that aid. So for example, they say, you need to work with a company from my country. As we heard the Bishop remind us there, domestically how difficult it is to have a corruption-free environment. If overseas development partners are joining in this scramble, then we believe that that is detrimental to the future of the people we're trying to assist. So in our case, in Ireland's case, not a single euro that we give of $1.6 billion last year, and the total amount of $2.4 billion overall per annum, not 1 euro of the $2.5 billion is in tied aid. It is for the people we are working with, those who are furthest behind, to decide what is the best use of that funding. And that's why we're so committed to trying to find more understanding in this space and trying to find more international partnerships and trying to actually influence a lot of these other countries who are looking now at the world a little bit differently. Here in Nigeria, I should say, we have a much smaller program because Nigeria is not amongst those countries that is least furthest behind. Although increasingly we are seeing, as the Bishop and others have outlined, we are seeing the challenge that people in Nigeria are facing. And we understand that, and we've responded to it. We've responded in a number of ways to it. We have a range of little projects that we support around the country that respond to community initiatives and community endeavours. And we're doing those building on the goodwill and the reputation we have, as I say, through the work of our missionaries. We also have a program where we mobilize funds at our headquarters for West Africa, and here in particular in Nigeria. We've been a member, for example, of the Nigerian Humanitarian Fund for more than a decade now, and the Irish people's contribution is very significant. very significant. We're one of the third or fourth largest donors to the Nigerian Humanitarian Fund. So we also have contributions, for example, to the World Bank, to our International Development Association, and the funds for the Global Environment Facility. So we're very committed to continuing that, and also trying to be a champion for Africa and for African voices at the United Nations level, something that Ireland continues to do. We try to live up to the role of a foreign development agency or a foreign partner, which should be to act as a catalyst. It should be to empower local leaders. It should de-risk investments, and it should stand in solidarity with the most marginalized. And that sounds very easy to do, and obviously nobody is perfect, but we have that as a mantra for us. We're standing with the people who are furthest behind, and we are trying to help them and to stand in solidarity with them. Our policy is called A Better World. It's called A Better World for a reason, because we want the place that we live in, and the place we're bringing our young people into, and the place where our partners live, to be better. We want it to be better than the generation who went before us lived through. Each generation should be seeing an improvement. And if we're not seeing an improvement, we need to start putting some of our brain power to work, don't we? To improve the next life for the people who are coming after us. So I'd ask you, let's not leave this summit today just with plans or strategies or whatever it might be. I'm going to do more research, and that's fantastic, and we love that. But with a new commitment to the humanity that binds us all together. The journey you're on today is the same journey the Irish people are on. The road is windy for both of us, but we have a lovely phrase in the Irish language. Like your beautiful African languages, you have proverbs for everything. You have these really smart, pithy proverbs for everything. We do too. And in the Irish language, one of the favourite ones we have, and Sister Kathleen McGarvey here, who runs your international office, she lives this, but she'll be able to tell you about this phrase. And the phrase is, Er ska akela amar awarden nadini. Er ska akela awarden nadini. And it means we all live in one another's shadow. So in other words, we're all completely depending on each other. Now that might seem like an academic thing to say when you're far away, you live 7 hours flight away from where I live. But our futures are intertwined with each other. What happens here is going to impact my children and my grandchildren. What happens where we live in Europe is going to impact what happens you and your children. Doesn't it make more sense to try to come at this with a common position and common humanity? Learn from the mistakes that we made, because we made lots of mistakes. But we also try to fix them. And we try to fix them together, because we realize that if we go on our own on a journey, it's very lonely and you won't get very far. But if you go with other people, guess what? You can go as far as you like. There's no limit to where you can go. I want to tell you that that sentiment, for me, is more relevant today than at any time during my life. And thank you for that lovely citation that you gave. It sounds like I've been around forever, but I've been around long enough to know this time, this place, right now, this sentiment is more important than ever. Er ska kela warden nadini. We're all living in each other's shadow, which means we're all dependent on each other. One person can have a huge impact. And if we leave with that resolve today, please remember that this is not just about Nigeria, it's not just about West Africa, it's not just about Africa. This is about the world in which we operate, because our world, we are so interdependent on each other. And whatever journey you're on, somebody else in the world has gone on that journey before. And one of the beautiful things about this campus and this visionary leadership that you have here is they are trying to ensure that all of the students here and the faculty have all of those international connections and opportunities. So I want to commend you again. Thank you very much for asking me to be a part of it. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Jack Blears, who's here with me. He came at very short notice. He's been in the embassy helping us out with a couple of really important projects. And I just said to him, would he like to come to Veritas? And with the enthusiasm of youth, he says, yep, I'll come straight away. I don't think he's ever been out this side of the city before, but it's great to have him here. And if you get a chance to say hello to us, please come up and say hello afterwards. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Please, a standing ovation for the Irish ambassador to Nigeria, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Ryan, for the very insightful, inspiring keynote address. Please, a crave your indulgence as I invite at the stage our very own Reverend Sister Kathleen McGavin-Ola for the vote of thanks, please.
So good morning to everybody. So I've been honoured to be asked to give the vote of thanks, and I'm very happy to give it. I've also been told to be brief, and that's not my forte, but I will be that today. So standing on existing protocol, to say a very, very sincere thanks to our Pro-Chancellor, Bishop Kuka, who truly has helped us to situate the Sustainable Development Goals in our own faith. In the Catholic teaching, not all of us here are Catholics, but certainly also in the Gospel, and even insofar as we are Muslims, I am quite sure that these Sustainable Development Goals also find their place there. So just that inspiration of our faith, and also waking us to our personal commitment. It is not just looking to the politicians, what can I do myself? And I thank Bishop Kuka for his inspiring words. And I think we are all truly grateful to have heard him, and he certainly spoke to our hearts. So may we put it into practice. Again, the Ambassador, His Excellency Peter Ryan, who has been so faithful to our university for the past over 1 year, is now, I think, an honorary member, if not an alumni. So he has spoken to us as well about the commitment of my own country, Ireland, and to the Sustainable Development Goals, which we continue to work on in our own country, where also there is poverty and there is homelessness and we have many other problems, but also in that sense of our commitment to the globe, and especially here he spoke of our commitment to Africa. And I thank Peter Ryan for that. Again, he brought it down to each one of us that we are truly dependent on each other. We live in a global world. We depend on one another. What I do has an effect on the life of somebody else, not only the one who is close to me, but we're very much aware of that today, that what I do here in Africa will affect what happens, maybe climate change in New Zealand. So we truly are responsible for each other, and Peter has been, again, concrete and simple. And I hope we have heard, I think even in our own university, we can put it into practice. We see water that is leaking, we see lives that are on, we throw paper. Well, just to remember that actually these are all in the line of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and of living our faith commitment. So again, on behalf of the organisers, to sincerely thank our Bishop and our Ambassador for your fidelity to us and for making this morning so interesting, so enlightening and so inspiring, and may God continue to accompany them on their journey. Thank you to all who have participated, especially all our visitors, but also all the university staff and students. We started punctually, and I think that is a wonderful testimony also to our commitment to ensuring that we too are committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. So thank you everybody, may we have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Kathleen McGavin, for the keynote vote of thanks, please. So please listen to these announcements before the closing prayer. The parallel sessions will All right, the announcements, please. The parallel sessions will begin immediately after the closing prayer, and they will start with the parallel session 1, which is to be held at the Postgraduate Conference Hall, led by Dr. Felix Iyala. Parallel session 2, to be chaired by Dr. Siri Ole, will be held at the Provost's College of Postgraduate Studies office. Parallel session 3, to be chaired by Dr. Eni Ekpe. Venue is the College of Postgraduate Studies Library. Parallel session 4, to be chaired by Dr. Owen Chukwu Emeka. Venue is the new Lecture Theatre Hall here. Parallel session 5, to be chaired by Dr. Mike Bonibaza. New Theatre Lecture Hall here. Parallel session 6, to be chaired by Dr. Samuel Wycliffe. New Lecture Theatre Hall here. Parallel session 7, to be chaired by Father Dr. Michael Pilani. Venue is Lecture Theatre Hall here. Parallel session 8, to be chaired by my humble self, Dr. Isaac Inotenyan. Venue is Lecture Theatre Hall here. Parallel session 9, to be chaired by Dr. Adidi Dokwesi Timothy. New Lecture Theatre Hall here. Parallel session 10, physical, to be chaired by Dr. Membe Baki. Multipurpose Hall. Parallel session 11, physical, to be chaired by Professor J.O. Ndubisi. Multipurpose Hall venue. Parallel session 12, to be chaired by Dr. Kevin Awantin, Multipurpose Hall. Parallel session 13, physical, to be chaired by Dr. Ikechukwu Maxwell Okandu, Multipurpose Hall. Parallel session 14, to be chaired by Dr. Okonko Okechukwu, Multipurpose Hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please, reception will take place here for conferees, and students are to proceed at the back of the hall for the reception. May I please reserve the privilege to, at this point, call on our Pro-Chancellor, His Lordship, Most Reverend Father Dr. Matthew Hassan Kuka, to give us a closing prayer and bless us. Please may we rise for the closing prayer and remain standing as we complete and take the Veritas anthem.
Once again, I thank the organizers, and please, I am very convinced this is going to be a conference like no other from what I can see here. But I will have to, the Vice Chancellor and I will have to literally, physically run, because the Governing Council meeting was supposed to start at 10, but out of respect for this event, we decided to move it to 11. We're already a few minutes. So please, I'm sorry I won't be able to greet many of you, I hope, but please, for those of you as students, take advantage of this conference and please try as much as possible to be punctual. Once again, I really want to thank all the organizers, and we hope that there will be more than enough to take home. Permit me, Your Excellency, formally thank you for that excellent conversation and the amount of information that we got. I've always said that the Irish people are more or less Africans who just happen to be in Europe, because there are quite a lot of things that we have in common, apart from the anti-British sentiments. We have a lot in common. But I really want to thank you, and I took particular attention to the point, I paid particular attention to the point you made, that unlike other countries that come and more or less our place is like a theater, because the resources still go back either to their contractors and so on. Everything that you bring remains here. We can only hope and pray that through the effective and efficient use of these resources, the lives of our people will change. So once again, we thank you very much. Almighty God and Father, we thank you, we praise you, we honor you. We thank you for the conversations we've had this morning. We thank you for those who will speak to us. We thank you for your children who gather. But we know that you yourself are the eternal teacher. We therefore ask you to open the eyes of our hearts so that we'll not only be hearers of the conversations and the knowledge that will be shared here. Give us the grace to become doers. We ask this through Christ our Lord. The Lord be with you. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you. Have a good conference, and God bless you.
Please remain standing for Veritas anthem.
Veritas University, born out of the moral imaginations of the sages, a dynamic Catholic university. You set the pace and show the way. Citadel of learning, moral and academic excellence, we hail thee. You set aglow the gift of the Spirit. We love thee. Hail, great Veritas University, my alma mater, seeking the truth. Hail, Veritas University, my dearest alma mater, and always is to irrigate the future. Healed out of the rocks, valleys, and streams, you are a beacon, lightening the nations. Citadel of learning, moral and academic excellence, we hail thee. You set aglow the gift of the Spirit. We love thee. Hail, great Veritas University, my alma mater, seeking the truth.
We recognize the presence of His Excellency Ambassador Professor Monique Ekong, who is the Nigerian immediate past ambassador to the Republic of Angola. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the very engaging opening ceremony participation. Please, conferees are hereby indulged to listen. Panel sessions for virtual participation, panel session 1 to 3 will be college or postgraduate studies. Panel sessions 4 to 9 will be held at the multipurpose hall. Panel sessions 10 to 14 will be here at the new lecture theatre. All students should go out and have their meals at the back of the hall. Conferees are to stay here and get refreshment here in the hall. Conferees are to stay here in the hall and get their refreshment. Please, I repeat,